speak. Hello, all you hardcore boxing fans out there. It's Russ here from Porky's Corner. This is going on members area, this video. But brought Julian back by popular demand, and we're going to put a members video out for you, a Christmas special one for you. We're going to talk about some hardcore points. But first of all, welcome, Julian. How are you doing?
I'm good, Russell, and thank you, and welcome to the members area. This is an exclusive for me. Elevation.
I want to talk about, obviously, coaching in UK. You're a big Lomachenko fan. You like to study him. You study a lot of fighters, don't you? Where are we going wrong with coaching at UK, Julian?
I mean, one of the things for me is you've just said the word. You said it twice. The word study. Now, I spent a long time going around gyms as an amateur, as a professional, and I always preferred to talk to the coaches. I think even when I was an amateur boxer myself, I was more interested in watching other fighters and watching the coaching aspect of it than I was, watching the actual fights. And so for myself, I was almost self-taught. I'm not going to criticize my previous coaches. When I was boxing in the 80s at Keith Tate and Mark Tate's gym, for example, it was a huge gym. There was like 60, 70 carded kids. It was a production line. You're in, you're out. You could fight, you couldn't. The ones who couldn't, you dropped to the bottom. And I realized there wasn't a lot of teaching going on, and probably at that stage because there wasn't a lot of time for the coaches. I think it's slightly different now. Keith Tate and Mark had massive numbers. Keith Tate could coach boxing, by the way. And I think it's the word study. So even when I was 15, 16-year-old amateur, there used to be adverts in the back of the boxing news where you could get VHS tapes. And what I found myself doing, you could get collections of fights from America and various things. And I found myself, I think it was £7 for a 3-hour VHS tape. And I found myself ordering all these videos of old footage from Kronk. It'd be like Mark Breland and Thomas Hearns and Mike McCallum sparring, and Hearns doing bag workouts and all that kind of stuff. And I was fascinated by it. And so being around the gyms over the years, to kind of fast forward, when you get talking to coaches, and I might come across as I'm rubbishing people, I'm just making statements based on my experience. Whenever you talk to other coaches about fighting and boxing and the art of boxing and the technical side of it, and I ask them, what about, do you study this fighter? Have you seen that fighter? Do you watch that? They all kind of look at me blankly and say, no, I tend not to watch a lot of that stuff, me. I don't have time. And I find it bizarre that people or teachers of boxing don't study the actual art of boxing. So I'll give you another example. And I always say, I don't watch fights, I watch fighters. So for example, if I'm going to study Thomas Hearns setting up a right hand, so I might watch Thomas Hearns against James Schuler. I might watch that. So it's a quick fight. I might watch it 20, 25, 30 times. I'll watch it in slow motion. I won't watch James Schuler. I will watch Thomas Hearns. I'll see how he'll create distance. I'll see how he'll create leverage for the right hand. I will set up the shots with a little touch, the hook to the body, step to the right, step under the hook. And I watch things such as that. And I think it's massively important to just study the art of boxing. I also spend a lot of time watching fighters shadow box. One of the things I noticed when I went to Gleason's, I've been to Gleason's in New York a couple of times. I was there on business, and I spent a day at Gleason's with Bruce Silverglade. I'd rung him and he invited me over, and he knew I was a coach in the UK and I was training a British champion at the time. And I just remember asking Bruce about Vivian Harris was in the ring, Russell, and I was there all day, and Vivian Harris was in the ring, and obviously he was WBA light welterweight champion, and he was just shadowboxing and moving and shadowboxing to music. He had some rhythm. He had a really good rhythm and a really good grace about him. And I went on and I was looking at a bit of sparring, and I went to the other side and I did a little bit of work with Joy Gamachi. He was showing me some pad breakdowns and showing me how he would approach the pads and various other things. And about an hour and a half later, I went back and Vivian Harris was still shadowboxing. And I remember asking Bruce, I says, how long is he going to be doing that for? He seems to be in that ring. He's been there ages. And Bruce kind of looked at me surprised as a UK coach, and he says, I don't know what you mean. He says it's his job. He's practicing his art. He'll probably do 2.5 hours shadowboxing. He's not in camp at the moment. He's just practicing his art. That's like crucial. And I just thought it was really interesting how, you know, all the UK coaches, it's just not something that they break down. I'm not saying none of them do, but genuinely, when you look at other coaches and other cultures and other boxing cultures, they seem to be so different to the UK.
Yeah, Robert McCracken's been put forward for some award or some. I don't know which one. I know he's got an MBE, might be other one OB or something. I don't know. Okay. He's been nominated. I'm hearing, or the people are saying he should be getting it. Another award for what he's done up there at the EIS. He's been there. He's been there over 12 years now. So he's had a good run, hasn't he? Who's the guy with Riverman? Who's the Lomachenko that he's had through books up there at EIS? Where's our next Lomachenko and Usyk?
Well, we definitely don't have one. We're going to have some good fighters coming through. We're going to have some really good fighters with great skills, and this is what I'm always preaching and always banging on about when I'm coaching. You get an amateur who comes through, and that's your platform. Yeah, he can fight, he can box, he's got the basic tools, but you have to build on that, and you have to make someone, from my point of view, into a complete fighter. And I just don't see that in the UK. So when you mentioned the word rhythm. So rhythm for me is something that's so important. So again, it might sound like a criticism, it's an observation. And if anybody wants to point me wrong, then I'm happy to discuss this. So watch the DAZN show, the live workouts, you know, all those coaches did. And I understand you just get in front of the camera, you just do a little bit of pad work, a little bit of shadow boxing. And there were two things that I observed. The first one, and I understand what it is, I know what it is. The first one is that all the fighters were so mechanical. There was no looseness about the work. Everything was an exaggerated move. The slip was like a short, stiff slip. The jab was a short, stiff jab. And it was almost like watching robotic movements at that point. So that was the first thing that I noticed. And the second thing that I noticed was some pretty poor pad work from the coaches. You know, when you're the pad man, and I'm not saying I'm the greatest in the pads in the world, I'm 100% not. But when you're the pad man, you've got to stand. You have to stand like a fighter stands. That's so the feet piece together, and that's so there's a real.
Too many are square on, aren't they?
They're so square on, and the pads are all over the place. I have little pet hates that really bother me about pads. So, for example, one of them is when a coach is taking a southpaw fighter on the pads. The coach always stands southpaw, and I'm thinking, unless you're actually boxing a southpaw, you should be stood orthodox, and that's quite complex in itself. It's a complex thing to do. But whenever I watch this, I'm like, why he stood southpaw? I know why they stand southpaw, because they lack the ability to stand orthodox against a southpaw fighter, because it's a difficult thing to do, because it throws your mindset all over the place. But when you both go southpaw, you know, right touches right, left touches left, and it becomes a lot easier. So I noticed some really mechanical, stiff fighters, and I noticed what I thought was some poor pad work. Another thing what drives me nuts is when I see a fighter and a coach on the pads, and he'll throw the jab to the left pad, you know, and the coach is holding the pad literally there, and then he'll throw the right hand to the right pad there, and I'm thinking, there's an 18-inch gap there. That opponent must have a pretty big head, you know, they'll literally hold the pads like that. And I think that's such a basic mistake. You've got to line your fighter up. So Keith Tate always said the same thing. The jab, the cross should predominantly, not always, but it should predominantly go to the one hand, because that's where your chin is. That's where the basic point is, on the chin. and then you throw the 1-2, and then you bring the hook in exactly the same position of the chin. It's about moving the hands in line with the chin, in line with the target. But what I'm watching is padmen go there and then go there, and then when the guy throws a left hook, they'll put the left hand forward, help basically moving the target. And I'm thinking, this is not how you do it. So it sounds like I'm ripping people to bits. I'm not. It's basic fundamentals I didn't see at that public workout. And I understand the public workouts. It's not the real stuff that people do in the gym. But I said this to you a couple of weeks ago. There's trainers out there. And I'm not saying a great trainer has to be great on the pads, by the way, but there were trainers out there who were not really great on the pads. And so I'm like, get somebody else to do the pads. You stand from the outside and watch and shout instructions. And in terms of rhythm, I used to train a fighter called Tony Aitchison. He was a good kid. He like some good kids, Russell, he drifted away. And it happens, but he was a good kid. Never got beaten in the amateurs, never got beaten in the pros. Got into a little bit of trouble. I always liked him, I always got on with him, but he was a good kid. And I used to get him to study fighters who were of a similar body type to him and a similar kind of aesthetics and similar physicalities as him. So I used to always ask him to watch Miguel Cotto. And one of the key things that I always said about Miguel Cotto was, if you watch Miguel Cotto move, it's seamless, it's like a dance. So he would literally, instead of there being that jerky style that I've just been talking about, we saw on the public workout, Miguel Cotto would be so fluid. It'd be beautiful to watch him. You know, he'd do the touch, the hook, the roll, and everything looked like one movement. So I used to say to Tony, watch Cotto, and I'd get the video on YouTube on my phone. And I said, look where his back foot is. Look how he's doing that roll. Look how it looks like it's one movement. And just continually try to perfect those things. So why UK fighters, and we have a lot of success with UK fighters, but why UK fighters are still so stiff, I've got no idea. I mean, obviously we've done so much better in the last 20, 30 years, you know, compared to where we were with Americans, for example. But, you know, when it was the Alan Minters, and Alan Minter was a brilliant fighter, but when we had the Alan Minters and the John H. Strace, it's great fighters, but we were known, weren't we, as being the upright kind of European style fighters, spine like that, head like that, gloves high. You never saw fighters with you know, lower guard or a lower front hand. You always saw fighters exactly the same, like a production line. And I feel like when I'm watching fighters now, I feel like I'm watching an evolution of that style, but still the same thing. Very stiff, no fluidity. And fighters generally in the UK are really, really good at one range. If you're a good outside fighter, you can't fight inside. If you're a good inside fighter, you can't fight on the outside. And if you're good at in the middle, in that middle position, what I like to call, you know, that holding the spot, a counter puncher, then you can't fight in the pocket, or again, you can't fight outside. And I've been watching Lomachenko this afternoon, and I watched Lomachenko, I watched a lot of older fighters, and I've just watched how Lomachenko moved. You know, I would literally, he's got no predictability in what he does. You know, I study fighters where my guys used to fight, and you see patterns. Boxers have patterns. They do the same thing all the time. And when I see Lomachenko, he's got no predictability. He'll touch upstairs. You'll think he's going to go downstairs. He'll pivot off to his right, and he'll touch upstairs again. Just when you think he's going to pivot off to his right, Comey, for example, thought, okay, he's pivoting off to my left to his right. I'm going to throw a left hook. Lomachenko switched it, and he'd push in, and he'd throw a little stab to the body, or he'd go to his own left. And it was like, how do you beat a fighter like that? I don't think it was quite right against Lopez, but how do you beat somebody like that? But also, we might not ever get a Lomachenko. I understand that. We might never get, you know, someone as great as Ray Leonard. I completely get that. But why are we not trying to teach fighters to be more rounded? Why are we not teaching fighters to work inside, to defend inside, to work in the middle? And it's just something that frustrates me, Russell. And it's not something that I don't practice that. You know, I was working with the fighter for the last 2 to 3 years, up until recently. And he was a really good amateur, good rangy amateur. And I said, well, you can do all that. That's fab. So what we have to learn, you have to learn you to fight on the spot. We have to learn you to fight in the pocket. And I don't know why, if we've got all these brilliant teachers out there, all these fantastic coaches, that Sky and DAZN, are all saying, oh, we've got this guy now, he's one of the best in the country. Why are we not seeing that in the product at the end?
Do you think that at the moment there might be too many people just trying to blag it because they've got a bit of a profile as being an ex-boxer or the connection to somebody, and too many people are getting trainers' licenses and just getting into it mix and they don't know what they're fucking doing?
Yeah, well, it's the same with boxing. As you know, you can now go from a white collar or from very little background and you can get a professional boxing license. So as a coach, so you can go in and get a trainer's seconds license if you've read the book, if you pass the interview, and just, you could get any coach to tell you what to say in the interview. And I could get someone to do a trainer seconds license. I'll say, they're going to ask you this, they're going to ask you that, they're going to ask you about the weights, they're going to ask you about your own background in boxing. Say you've been working with me for 4 or 5 years, blah, blah, blah. My brother did it, by the way. My brother's got no background in boxing and he got his trainer seconds license just so he could work with me and help me out. But he'd no background in boxing, he'd no background in anything. So why are we not, a bit like when you do your level 1 ABA course, you spend 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, over 2 weekends. So you do 4 days and you have to prove your competency. Why are we not doing that with professional trainers? Why are we not having workshops over 5 days or over, I don't know, 2 or 3 weekends? Bear in mind, this is the most dangerous sport in the world, and people get hurt and people get killed. It's like, no, I'm not saying everybody has to have boxed. I don't think that's crucial that you have to have boxed to have been a good teacher. Teaching's teaching, it's a skill in itself. But why are we not doing practicals? Why did I, when I did my refresher, go to the Boxing Board of Control coaching seminar over 2 days and just listen to a load of facts and figures? Why did nobody question my competency in a physical sense? Why do they not bring professional fighters into these weekends? Pay them some money, by the way. Let's open a big gymnasium. Let's get these guys who want to be professional coaches and say, okay, here's a professional boxer. He's yours for the next hour. Show us what you can do. Put him through a session. Get in the ring with them. Why are we not doing this? Why is everything about answering questions and being able to tell someone about the weights? It means nothing to me. I think we need to, it's like we need to have levels. If you're going to start working with an elite fighter, should you not have to have some kind of elite practical experience? Should you not have a level of competency to work with an elite fighter? You wouldn't let me get involved in coaching football and just jump and start working with Man City. That wouldn't happen, would it? They say, well, what can you do? What do you know? What's your background? And now, Russell, we're just getting people coming into it. So you've got the people coming into it who haven't got a clue. And then you've got the others by association working with good fighters or being known to have worked with good fighters, who people make assumptions, great coaches. So I heard a comment the other day, and I'm not digging this coach out, but I heard a comment and it says, so-and-so is now one of the best coaches in the country. And it annoyed me because I thought, first of all, how do you know that? Have you ever spent time watching this guy in a gym with his fighters? No. How do you know what everybody else can do? How do you know all these thousands of amateur coaches who have done this for 30, 40 years tirelessly? He's just coming out with shit like that. Oh, he's one of the best coaches in the country. And I'm thinking, I don't see it. I don't see that. I mean, if you were judging coaches, Russell, how would you judge a coach? You would judge a coach based on the development of the fighter, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You'd see a fighter turn over, and you say it was a good kid, decent amateur, nothing special. It was a good kid. And then you'd watch him develop. And part of that would be the fighter developing and the fighter getting better and getting more experience. It's not really, the coach isn't everything, but you'd expect to see certain things within that fighter progress and progress and progress. And I see some of these fighters coming through, and all I see is they get a little bit fitter, like a bit stronger. But I never see anything. I never see anything different in terms of their performance. So why are they not being taught this?
It's because we're papering over the cracks, aren't we? Everybody wanted to get a fast buck. There's no longevity, is there, in anything that anybody's doing? There's nobody's taking the time and saying, do you know what, this kid's going to be good in 5 years. Let's take his time with. They want it in 2 years, don't they?
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah. It's the world we live in, isn't it? Everybody wants everything now, don't they? I want fast food. I don't want to cook a nice meal. I want it in 5-10 minutes. So I'm going to go and Just Eat. I'm going to get something delivered to my door. I want to do my banking now. I don't know into everything. Everybody wants something really, really, really quick, and people want success really quick. But honestly, the coaching side of it, and I said this before, I was so disappointed because when I started coaching, you know, my heroes were not just the fighters, but my heroes were the George Bentons, the Eddie Futchers, the Ray Arcells, Manny Stewart. I mean, just wow, the guy was just brilliant, absolute brilliant. And he was a good case in point, by the way, which goes back on what I've said about the pads. Manny Stewart had such a fantastic boxing brain, but it wasn't great on the pads. I've seen Manny Stewart 7-8 times. He was pretty poor. So you don't need to be good on the pads, by the way, to be a good coach.
He didn't like doing pads. Angelo Dundee didn't do them either, did he?
Exactly, but it was still a great boxing brain and a great motivator and a great teacher of the art, as was, you know, Eddie Futch and George Benton and those guys. And you know, I look at that and I think, you know, Angie Dundee was the brains and he was the strategist behind Ray Leonard, but it was Dave Jacobs and Jack Morton who would do the work in the gym. And I'm thinking, you know, if you ask some of these so-called celebrity coaches now, and you ask them about certain coaches from previous years and certain things, would they even know they are? And I'm not sure that they would do. I just think we're being fed this thing, and I'm not somebody who talks nonsense. I certainly don't have a big ego, but I do always say, Russell, if anybody thinks, well, who are you? Who have you coached? I'll say, well, anybody who wants to stand me side to side and do a coaching seminar, I'll talk in a gym full of 20 boxers and give a boxing seminar for 2 hours without coming up for breath. I've done that before. I've done that several times before, just because I don't shout about it and people don't say Julian McGowan's one of the best coaches in the country. It just, and I'm not, by the way, it's just that blag, isn't it? It's just all that. And coaches are like boxers in the UK as well. Whenever I got talking to them, they would never show me what they did, but they'd always tell me who they'd worked with. It's almost like a justification, a defense mechanism. You get talking to a coach in the UK and say, well, I worked with so-and-so, and I was chatting to Billy Graham, and I used to do a little bit of work with so-and-so. And then I'm thinking, well, you with a boxer now, and I've not seen you go up to him once. And he's a British champion, or he's a European champion, and he's on a bag, and he keeps making the same fundamental mistakes, and I've not seen you once correct him. So it's just that, Russell. It's just the sport.
Lip service, innit? What it is, you've got people now who are in the game, slipped in not through the back door, through the cat flap. They've slipped in and they've got a bit of presence on social media. They're connected to certain people, and that's just how it's going. And I want to know what these coaches are doing with anybody from scratch. You mind getting world champions on your lap? Let's see what they're doing with people from scratch, and let's see what they're doing with people who've had losses and what they can do with that person.
I saw something on Instagram. I sometimes do a little Instagram live. I'm not on social media, I just do it with somebody else. And I called it out, and I was actually chatting to Peter McDonough about this. And it was a video of Anthony Joshua. It wasn't with McCracken, it was with one of the other coaches. And he'd got the big foam bloody sex aids or whatever they use when Joshua's in the ring. And I watched him doing these moves with Joshua, and the coach was stood southpaw, and he kept getting Joshua to execute a move, and then he'd touch him and he'd touch the glove, and Joshua would like do the little block and do the little block. And I noticed every time we did this move that Joshua, to defend this backhand, he was basically bringing his right shoulder forward. He was squaring up every single time, you know, really badly squaring up, instead of just shuffling in and stepping out with his left foot and keeping that point and keeping that angle. Joshua was defending the left hand by stepping across with his right foot and stepping across like that. And he was showing a massive gap. And I called it out on Instagram, and I said, The guy who's doing that with Joshua now, he wants fucking sacking, he wants shooting. You've got the heavyweight champion of the world who's coming up against a really tricky southpaw. He's making a basic fundamental mistake. And I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. And I said this before it happened. I said, Usyk against Joshua, the first 2 or 3 rounds, he's going to throw that backhand straight down the middle to the body. And he's going to try and get the reaction, because this is what the coach was doing. And you mimic what you taught. You do what you taught. And every time Usyk, he kept throwing those little left hands, stabbing shots to the body. And then he was throwing them straight through the middle. And Joshua was positioning his backhand completely wrong. And this is what he was doing in the video, what I saw on Instagram. And I said, when I was watching it live, I said to my girlfriend, I says, you watch now, Usyk is going to loop. He's basically going to loop that left hand. Instead of throwing it straight, he's going to throw the little feint, and he's going to loop it around the side. And Joshua is going to bring his own right hand across his body, and he's going to get nailed time and time again. And I called the shot out before he'd done it, and you could see it was brilliant from Usyk, by the way, how he was just touch him.
Played with him, didn't he?
Played with him, and I just thought, you see, this is something that Joshua has stood completely wrong. You know, he should be the most valuable fighter in the world. So he should have the best teachers around him. If McCracken's not in camp, he should have absolute teachers around him. And I just thought, what you're doing there is going to get him nailed. It's going to get him absolutely nailed. It's a basic fundamental mistake against the southpaw. You exaggerate the point. You exaggerate your own angle of that 45-degree upper body angle. You've got to exaggerate the point so there's less to look at, because you're already at a disadvantage because he shifts across to your right, which means you're already at a disadvantage by being more square against the southpaw. So what you need to do is you need to exaggerate that point. And they weren't doing it in the gym. And I saw all these videos and explosive S&C, and he's throwing medicine balls at walls, and he's hitting tires, and he's doing all this stuff. And I'm thinking, you need to be basically positioning your body correctly, mate. That's what you need to be doing. You need to be working on certain things. And then, as I've said it, in the fight, it was so easy for Usyk. I mean, Usyk's a clever fighter. It was so easy because it was basic fundamental mistakes in the gym, Russell, and not being taught how to stand. It was bizarre for me to watch. You watch Anthony Joshua against Usyk, and forget Usyk, don't watch Usyk, just watch Joshua and how he stood with his spine upright, how he's positioning his gloves almost together. At times he's on what's called praying. Darky Smith used to call it praying, when fighters push the gloves together. And now he's got those massive exposed spots on each side. And I couldn't believe that, and I'm repeating the same point, but I couldn't believe that heavyweight champion of the world was making such fundamental errors. And I just thought, Usyk's just he's going to take the piss now. He's just going to be like so easy for him. It was just so novice. I was cringing watching the coaching.
Joshua's a manufactured fighter, though. They rushed him through because he got a belt, and then they tried to protect him a long way, haven't they?
100%. Yeah, Joshua's. I hate to say.
They were gifted a gold medal as well.
Well, I think the majority of people didn't think he won the first fight, and there was another fight in that. It
lost
was
all 3 of them, didn't it?
There was. I remember watching them. Definitely the first fight. The first fight he got beat, I thought, and then there was maybe the second fight. I can't quite recall that.
Chinaman, the second one, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then the third fight, I'm thinking you're going to get the home advantage here, but he's not really. I say he's not really developed. I might argue he's gone backwards, actually. When I look at him, just physically, watch Joshua, the way he moves, I might actually argue he's gone backwards. I mean, the Ruiz second fight, you know, people have this down as some kind of jab and move masterclass. It was awful. You got a guy who's 20 stone who just couldn't move because he'd been training at Burger King. And then you got a guy just tickling him, doing anything to just steal the rounds. And it was hardly an heroic
awful
performance. And I just thought it was just awful to watch. And Tyson Fury must have been gutted that fight didn't happen, because it would be the easiest 40-50 million he's ever made in his life.
Well, it's their own faults, isn't it? It hasn't happened. They're all to blame, all of them.
Every one of them. Yeah, absolutely, every one of them, because
And
you
they
know,
could
that
miss
they're not
out.
interested. Well, Fury said, didn't he? Tyson Fury said recently, I saw the video. He says, if my team don't get me out in February or March, I'm going to sack my whole promotional team. So let's see if Fury's out in February or March.
Just say things. They say things for effect, don't they? They don't think about consequences of what they say. So he says, I don't believe me. So
no, I don't. And I like Fury. I think he's great. He's great to watch.
yeah.
He's charismatic. He does all those things. But as you say, in terms of anything he says, I don't believe any of it. And if he's out in February, let's wait and see. Bearing in mind we're only 8 weeks away from the end of February.
Yeah.
So is he sacking Aram? Is he sacking Warren?
No. You're not get rid of them. Not yet, anyway. No. But when time's right, if there's a better deal on the table, whether it be PBC or Sky, he will not hesitate to stick a knife in Aram's back or Warren's. That's the nature of the beast. And Aram and Warren, they will know that after what happened with Hennessy.
Just like if Tyson Fury lost his next 5 fights, they wouldn't hesitate to drop Tyson Fury, would they? And I remember the first time you and I chatted, Russell, and I said, you were asking me about Joe Joyce, and the guy who looks after him, and he said, you know, should he be doing this, or is he doing what's best for himself in terms of the manager? And I just said, people will always do what's best for them. I don't particularly like it, but unfortunately, people will always do what's best for themselves.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I enjoyed that chat on coaching and that.
Thanks,
no problem. Dennis's show last night. We'll just finish off on that, and then your predictions for tonight's B5. Dennis had a show cancelled 2 weeks ago. He cancelled it on day, and then last night's 10-fight bonanza were a 5-fight bonanza, but no belts in any of the fights, and the 5 opponents, 4 had losing records. All 5 home fighters won. These fights that are getting cancelled, who is at board dealing with this? Because is it just ploys for people to sell tickets, or the genuine pullouts? Because there's a lot of people pulling out on shows, and is it a matchmaker's problem? Is it at board not doing enough, or fans just being took piss out of? Because I'm not just digging out Dennis as well. It's happening across the board. Pullouts left, right, and centre in fight week. Everybody knows, and you know and I know, it's because of ticket deals, yeah, which are illegal. What are the board doing about it?
Yeah, I had a kid I used to train, and I'm not digging out a manager. I'm really not. It's the nature of it. Some people can't afford to lose money. But I had a kid about 8-9 years ago. We trained over Christmas, Russell. He was boxing in a show in January. And we trained and we trained and we trained. You know, he's spending time not being, it was his 5th fight, it was unbeaten. He'd won 2, drawn 2. And we were on a show, I think it was in Bradford. And he'd only done 17 tickets. And his fight was pulled. And it was a sort of reality pill for me because, you know, he didn't work, but I'd got kids at home, and I'd spent time away, you know, on my Christmas 2 weeks off work. I'd spent time in the gym every day. And I thought about it, and I was actually going to put 500 quid in myself just so the kid could box. And then I was told it's still not enough money if you put 500 quid in. And I thought, I mean, you know the end of the story, the kid never boxed again because it's just too much pressure on a kid having to sell tickets like that. And he didn't box again. He was 19 years old, he was unbeaten, and he's now 30 and he hasn't boxed in 11 years. And it showed to me the brutal side of the sport. So in terms of Dennis's show, I don't know the sort of details of Dennis's show, but my understanding is there were 10 fights and only 5 of those fights happened. Now, personally, as a consumer, and I don't think we can point this at Dennis or anybody, we have to say there's something fundamentally wrong with boxing when this can happen, whether it's unreliable trainers, whether it's unreliable boxers, whether it's there was never 10 shows. You'll never really get to the meat of it.
Or ticket deals or what? You wouldn't get it in football, would you, or rugby?
Well, it wouldn't happen. But if I was, I went to see, long time ago, I went to a gig to see Morrissey. And basically, he did one gig on stage and he collapsed. He was known for doing this. I got my money back. Whenever I've previously been to see events, I've either asked for, I'm not some of these people complains, but if I've not got what I wanted, I'll ask for my money back. I'll ask for a part refund. I went out for a meal a few weeks ago. My partner, she asked for a starter. They didn't bring it. They were busy, but they put the starter on the bill. It was quite an expensive place, 15 quid starter. And who says, well, we didn't get the starter, so we're not paying for it. So what I'm coming up to, Russell, is let's just say you pay 50 quid and you expect to see 10 fights for titles. You might be a neutral. You might not be supporting one particular boxer, but you say, let's go watch some boxing. Let's support local boxing. If I spend 50 quid and I'm going to watch title fights, 10 rounders, 12 rounders, whatever, and then I end up getting 5 fights, and those 5 fights are all one-sided, I personally would ask for a refund or a part refund because I'm not actually getting what I've been told. So first of all, there's the consumer, the walk away dissatisfied. I don't mean somebody who's supporting just their mate. I'm talking about someone who's a neutral consumer. I haven't been given what you've told me. I haven't been given what I've been sold. I haven't been given a title fight. I've not been given 10 fights. I've had 5 fights. They're all pretty one-sided. So there's that aspect of it. But why is this happening? You understand you have a 12, 13 fight bill and you always expect to lose 1 or 2 fights. You know, even the amateur shows, they'd always say, we'll lose 1 or 2 fights. But why are we getting to shows? It's not just Dennis's shows. Why are we getting to a situation where like half of the fights are being pulled? But it's not just half of the fights. Let's call it out. It's the fights you want to watch. It's the big names, the title fights. They're all getting pulled, and then the rest of it is effectively what you're paying for is an undercard. How does it happen? I don't know. People can't blame COVID for everything because this has been going on for years and years and years and years. And how do you get to a situation where, like I said, half the, football doesn't get cancelled, does it? I'm not about like the weather, or it's not a weather thing. Boxing's an indoor sport. How does it happen when
ticket deals, in my opinion, it's money. How many tickets you don't know? We've done this much. Well, you haven't done enough to pay for opponents, so you're boxing for no, and you're going to know me because we need to pay this opponent. Oh, I can't do that. Well, you're off show then. That's the answer. But I'm asking what you thought it were. So then, that's what my opinion is of it. Well, then I've seen it happen.
Yeah. Well, I think it is. Well, does the boxer sells tickets? Now, I thought, a music promoter or a big event, it promotes itself, doesn't it? The media, everything else. You go to the box office, you get the tickets. You don't see the act. You don't see the bands in local pubs going flogging tickets, do you? And if you don't sell enough tickets, you're not supporting that. You're not on that gig. You get kicked off that gig. It doesn't happen in any other sport. It's only in boxing, which is the example.
That's what I said to you. Ticket deals are 100%. Illegal. They're illegal. They didn't use. They were illegal years ago, but they weren't. Fighters weren't made to sell tickets. It were promoters said, "Right, you're getting this much. This is what you're getting." Exactly. That's it. Now, in the age of social media, everybody wants to promote themselves on social media. Fair enough. Well, they might as well sell tickets then promote Will Setting if they're promoting the sense on Twitter. They've got all these followers. Let them go out and sell tickets. But boxing shouldn't have to be like that, because what about them kids that ain't got much of a personality and they're a bit introverted and they just want to, like Clinton Woods. I know him personally, and I don't think he's got a personality, but he wouldn't have been no good nowadays. He wouldn't have been any good. He wouldn't have got very far nowadays because he's not big on social media, is he, and all that? But he was a world champion for over 3 years. He held a belt over 3 years, which is a long time, isn't it?
It's just such a different world, isn't it? And that's the thing is if you're not exciting, or you don't have something about you, or you're not doing the old pushing, shoving at weigh-ins, and they consider you're not doing your job. When did it become a boxer's job? I've seen the stress that naturally having fighters who sell tickets. I've seen the stress it brings to fighters. Literally 2 days, a day before the fight, flogging tickets, going around, driving around. Sykes would do it. Sykes' mate would do it. We'd be going around. I'd try and flog tickets. We're all trying to flog tickets So the kids got, you know, half decent purses. And there's a lot of shows going on at the moment. As you said, it's a ticket deal. So guess what? You get to the 2 weeks away, how many tickets you sold? 6. Right. If you don't sell this many by this point, it's off. So that fighter has been training for 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks. And then with a week to go, it gets pulled off the show. So anybody who doesn't know we obviously know the boxing side of it. What happens is 2 things. Fighters either packing, which is like the kid I've just said, I can't sell tickets. The lad I was talking about, he couldn't flog tickets. That was it. He just struggled like mad. His 5th fight, he just couldn't sell tickets. That was it. And he never boxed again. So they either never box again or they become an opponent. And that's why you see these journeymen. A lot of journeymen, when you watch the records, look at the records closely, they generally win the first 4 or 5 or 6 fights. And then all of a sudden, they can't flog tickets, and then they get last-minute jobs, and then they get matched above the weight and all this kind of stuff. And they just become journeymen because they think, I just can't deal with the hassle. And it sickens me that, like, as we've said, it's become a popularity contest. But who's looking after boxers? So why are the Boxing Board of Control not bringing in rules that say you have to have a set purse? You have to give a contract to that boxer that says he's going to earn £1,500 for a 4-rounder, irrespective of what tickets he sells. This wouldn't happen in any other sport.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Let's finish off on Chisora Parker and your prediction for how the fight's going to end. And is it right they're getting all this money?
Well, it's I've got no issue with Chisora and Parker fighting again. How can I have an issue? It's people want to pay to watch it. I have an issue with it being a main event and the big flagship show before Christmas. If that's the end of year Beano, a rematch of listen, they're both competent heavyweights, but none of them are ever going to be an elite heavyweight. And if people tell me that Parker was a world champion, I'll just tell you that that's just semantics by saying he was a world champion. It's just the state that we're in. So you've got 2 fighters who probably, what's Parker? Lower top 10, 9th, 10th best heavyweight in the world. Chisora might be 15th, 16th best heavyweight in the world. So you've got these 2 guys who's on a main event, and none of them are ever going to be a world champion again of any kind of recognition. None of them are ever going to be, and not everybody can be a world champion, of course. So there's that aspect of it. Then you've got the second aspect is it was a poor fight. It was awful. It was just, we had a bit of drama in the first round, and then it was just a typical Chisora and Parker fight. So this is what I class as bad matchmaking. It's bad matchmaking because when you get 2 guys of a similar style and none of them do anything particularly good. So Chisora's got a workman-like style. You know, he does what he does. We all know what Chisora does. He throws a big overhand right, a big overhand left, then he rolls, and then he grabs, and then he clubs, and he throws those swings, doesn't he? He's not going to be a technical kind of fighter. Parker's a little bit more technical, but he's painfully slow. He's just like so one-paced. He doesn't do anything brilliantly. So you don't have a great boxer against a great attacking fighter, or you don't have 2 fighters who are going to be able to fight inside. You don't have styles that are going to mesh. They're never going to create an attractive style. So I think they could fight 10 or 15 times, and it's probably going to be a close 12-rounder every time they fight. And it's going to be the same tonight, from my view. It's like maybe whoever pushes a little bit harder in the last 4 or 5 rounds, who knows what kind of scorecards we're going to come with. Is Eddie going to try and sell us a trilogy? Is Chisora going to get his revenge? And then we're going to have, you know, just like we had Ali Fraser. Yep, cover your eyes, Russell. Just like we had Ali Fraser, those legendary all-time great heavyweights. We might get a trilogy of Parker and Chisora.
Imagine comparing that to Ali Fraser's trilogy.
Yeah, someone said, oh, it's like Ali Fraser, and it's like, you know, Riddick Bowe against, you know, Holyfield. It's just, and this is a trilogy of what we might be treated to. So My boxing intelligence tells me that Parker will probably just edge it again. He might just do the cleaner work. But my instinct and being cynical in terms of where boxing is tells me that Chisora is probably going to just eke out a decision. And we're going to get to see this fight again. So I'll flip a coin, and it doesn't make me wrong. It just means it's like Khan and Brook, isn't it? We don't know who's the most shot, so anyone could win that fight. It's not like some fights which are so much more. Like, for example, if Conor Benn fought McKinson, I put my house on McKinson beating him. Little doubt. Just like Usyk fought Joshua, you and I, Usyk will school him, no doubt about it. This one's a difficult fight to predict because it's going to be messy. It's going to be quite even. They're quite evenly matched in terms of skill sets. Chisora didn't look bad at the weigh-in. I thought Chisora had a nice shine to him. I thought his conditioning, it looked like his conditioning was quite good. There was some definition across the shoulders and across the back, which I've not seen for a while. So he looked in decent condition. So I'm labouring the point. I'm going to go for Chisora in an ugly, messy fight that we are told is a great fight.
Well, I'm going to get Parker on points.
Well, I hope we get Parker on points because we don't have to see it again then, do we? And people say, well, you don't have to see it anyway. It's like, well, I pay my cash, so I'm entitled to watch it. I'm entitled to watch good quality boxing.
Fury beat Chisora twice, and they're talking about a third one, aren't they?
I couldn't believe that when I heard it. It's like, you know, I was at that Fury Chisora rematch because obviously Sykes was on the bill. So Chisora's gone backwards several steps. Fury's gone forward several steps. So that would be almost like legalized manslaughter, wouldn't it? Watching Tyson Fury and Derek Chisora, it would be just like, it'd be just awful, you know. But they'll get away with anything, and it's what always amazes me with Chisora is he's still a big name. He's still, this isn't pay-per-view, by the way, because DAZN even couldn't get away with that, but he's still a big name, and people still get excited about Chisora. And I'm thinking, you know, when we get to the stage that he's got 25 losses on his record, are we still going to be the same? Is he still going to be involved in these big fights? How many defeats do we have to have on Derek Chisora's record before we said, you know what, he's lower European level in terms of where he's at right now, or in terms of where he's ever been? He's never been what I would consider a world-class fighter. And he has a bizarre view of how fights are scored as well, because I've never known Chisora get beat and actually think he got beat, which is it's a bizarre
thing. Got people in his ear gassing him up.
Yeah, I think it's you're going to get the coaches might get more credit tonight for the win than the boxers. You know that, Russell. You'll have to listen to that. You might get some sermons tomorrow morning, and you might have to just stay off social media for a couple of days.
Well, Andy Lee and Dave Caldwell doing sermons. What did you think to Derek Chisora playing musical chairs yesterday? Did you see it?
It did. I watched it. Yeah, I watched it live. It's like I'm trying to be polite because it's the holiday season, and we had some elves and stuff dressed up, didn't we? And you know, we had Darren Barker and his mate. They were like a poor man's Anton deck, and I get it's a festive season, and everybody were having fun, but I didn't quite know where he was going with it. Really, I wanted to see him do a bit of shadow boxing actually, and do a bit of pad work to see, you know, how he was looking, but it didn't quite flow. I saw Ant Crawler. I know Ant, and bless him, he was laughing his head off, but he looked a little bit gutted, and I would probably just describe it, maybe I'm being a killjoy, I'd describe it as being awkward. It was awkward to watch.
Scraping barrel is my opinion. I think we're at that stage now where Derek Chisora, people are tuning in to see what he's going to do. They're not tuning in for the fight. They're tuning in and say, well, what's going to happen at this presser? Derek Chisora's there. Is he going to spit on somebody, throw a table, or what's going to happen? probably more of watching him leading up to his fight than actually watch his fight on the night. And this is the fundamental problem with people making themselves bigger than what they should be, really, like your Chizoras of this world. And there's plenty more like him who get social media, but they don't back up the hype. There's plenty more like that. There's plenty more on the Twitters till 4 a.m. when they've got to get up at 6 for a run.
We've
been down that road on many videos, but I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it's that USP, isn't it? It's that unique selling point that everybody's trying to get now. But for me, the unique selling point would be Derek Chisora putting on an absolute massive performance and getting Parker out within 4 rounds and looking like he's been transformed and eating kangaroo meat and all this kind of stuff. That's how you sell yourself, or you used to be able to sell yourself with electric performances. But we know we're going to get the same maul tonight. And if we don't, and I'm wrong, and we get like a boxing clinic and Joseph Parker turns into Larry Holmes and, Chisora turns into Shavers and we get like a high level, massively exciting fight, then I'll say, well, I was wrong and I'm pleasantly surprised to be wrong. But you've got an unattractive fight going on. And again, as I've said, this is probably the 9th or 10th best heavyweight in the world. Someone who's the 15th or 16th best heavyweight in the world. And it's quite sad, actually, because I know you always mention Hughie Fury, and it's such a shame that they still get this spotlight on these fighters and they still get this exposure. And you've got a kid like Hughie Fury and other young fighters coming through. They're never going to get that opportunity either to be in the spotlight when we continually retread these names all the time. And
because they might do views, because they do views, isn't it?
Yeah. Of course it is, as you've just said.
Controversial characters and all that, You don't fail.
Flip a table, have a fight, throw a bottle at somebody, do whatever, get no slap on the wrist from the boxing board of control, and you can do all these things. And
get a Rolex bought you by Eddie Hearn for flipping table.
Yeah. One more thing, Russell, if you don't mind me. I know we've almost wound up now, and it's been brilliant talking to you, but you remember the video I did? We did a recent video, and you asked me about Conor Benn.
Oh, yeah.
And I said to you at the time, I says, talking about wanting to, be the best and fight the best. You watch him, Adrian Broner. You watch the momentum happen with the Broner fight now, and they're starting to talk about. And I think I actually made a comment on your last video, Russell, where I said you mentioned Adrian Broner because he knows it'll get clickbaits, and there'll be IFL. They'll be doing the big clickbait headline about Broner and Conor Benn, and they're doing it, aren't they? I remember saying to you, it's like a soap opera. It's the most predictable sport in the world, and now you're going to get the drum roll for Broner and Conor Benn, and we're going to told that this is a massively competitive fight, 4-weight world champion, and blah blah blah. And I just thought,
he's 220 pound, Broner. So how's he going to do 147?
It wouldn't surprise me. It'd be just like a Michelin man, and it makes you laugh though, doesn't it? It's name association, and I just thought I wanted to just add that one in there, that these guys are serious, but he's not mentioning Virgil Ortiz. Let's not mention him because he might take me out in 2 rounds. I won't mention him. I'll mention the older, fat, out of shape, inactive, one win in 4 years, Adrian Broner. Do you know why? Because the casuals out there know who Adrian Broner is, and they can identify with him, and it'd be a good villain, to bring over. And I just thought the matchmaking and the hype around all this stuff now, it's so cynical, isn't it? And then back to my point is that, and you see kids like, is it Chris Congo? I know he got beat by McKinson. It was a good fight. Congo looked to me like somebody, good talented fighter, probably sells no tickets, and he hasn't got that kind of spark about his personality or that spark about his, his style. And I watched him before he beat McKinson, and I saw him the fight before, and I thought, oh, this looks a really good kid, decorated amateur. And I looked at his inactivity in his record, and I looked at the inactivity and the fact he's 30 years old. Why doesn't someone give Congo a chance? Where's his opportunity? Because it goes down to what we've been saying in this video. It's a popularity contest. There's no controversy around Congo. There's no controversy around McKinson. Look at the skills that boy's got. Look at the absolute, how awkward and how skillful that kid. And no one's talking about these guys. Instead, we're talking about Derek Chisora and Joseph Parker, which it'd be like watching two drunks outside Red Lion
On a
tonight.
bench against Broner.
Yeah, that's where we're at, because it's it's like the WWE, isn't it? When they kept bringing Hulk Hogan back at about 60 years old, because people remember Hulk Hogan, people remember Adrian Broner. But they remember him as being this fighter knocking everybody out.
Four-weight world champion.
Yeah, nobody remembers the last few performances. They don't remember that. They just know the name because they're not close enough to the sport. But so that was my prediction on your last video. That's what we're going to get sold. That'll be Conor Benn's next fight will be Adrian Broner.
Jesus, he could get beaten if Broner turns up.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But like you said about his weight, he's not going to turn up, is he? Because he's going to kill himself. If he does, I think Broner's skint. So whatever legal problems he's got, if Eddie Hearn throws enough money at Broner, he'll do anything to get down to the weight, because it's that, isn't it? He'll need his cash. Flushed it all down the toilet, didn't he?
Yeah. Okie dokie then. Well, listen, thanks for coming on, Julian. You've been a real proper addition to the Porky Express train that's gathering momentum.
Thank you. Yeah, it certainly is. I noticed your subscribers they're going to hit 11,000 in the next couple of days, aren't they?
Yeah, well, we'll get there, won't we, eventually? We've done it all legitly. It's all organic. There's people who've got 3 and 4 and 5 times the subscriptions I've got on boxing channels. And let me tell you this, they're still on the Duke views I've got. So are they buying subscribers or?
Well, I saw someone recently, no names, and they've got about 3 times your subscribers, and the video had 7 views, and I'm not even joking.
Yeah, cheats. See, I
can't do that. Hang on a minute. Yeah, how have you got 30-odd thousand subscribers and 7 people? One person's commented and 7 people have watched your video. What am I missing?
Because they're cheating, aren't they? Listen, we all know how to do it. I know how to do it. You've got to throw money at the job, right, for starters. And these are all backing me. So no, we don't do it properly, because he built a business up from scratch over 15 years. And, he's multi-millionaire now, and he horse races and all that. But he believes in that you've got to put your time in, and you'll get no rewards for a few years, and then they'll come. So I just said, yeah, all right. So we're only doing it it's like an hobby in it, but it's not costing me now, and there's no expenses at all getting paid. So we're happy with where channel's going. But hopefully it'd be nice if we could get a bit bigger, and then it could turn into like a wage and then something a bit better. But
yeah, I think you will do. Personally, I think you will do, because you're resonating with people. As I said before, you're hitting a point. I'm quite a serious person. That's probably come across here over the last 3 or 4 videos. I'm quite a serious person, and if your appeal was just all jokes and all humor and all gimmicks and etc., and there was no substance, you wouldn't have got me subscribing to your channel and coming on. It's not about that. I think you're resonating with people. You're hitting a raw nerve, what needs hitting. And I guess it's one of those things. Yes, you want the numbers, but you want the right people to watch your show.
Yeah, I don't want people to come on here and just agree with everything. Some people say, oh, they always agree with it. No, that's not true. I have some right debates on here. So a lot of people, sometimes people might agree with me because I might be right on it, but I'm not right on everything. I don't profess to be a know-all of boxing. I think you're always learning in whatever profession you're at. Even like my father was an electrician down at Pitt, and there's stuff, he's retired now and pensioned off, but there's still stuff that he picks up on YouTube that, he maybe didn't learn down at Pitt or when he were at Telecom and stuff like that. But I think wherever you go, wherever you do in life, you should always try and learn more, because you're not an expert at it. Lomachenko's not the finished article in his head, probably. To us, he probably is, but in Lomachenko's head, he's probably thinking he still makes mistakes. And yeah, we can only try.
Absolutely, but you just got to keep going, mate. And keep doing what you're doing, because you're hitting a spot. You're hitting a spot because people are revising and amending their behavior based on some of your videos. They just won't come out and say it's as a result of your latest video. But I see certain things. The big one for me that I always remember was about, I just started subscribing to you. Might have been a year ago, 18 months ago. And I remember Adam Smith going out and talking about how that people calling him biased and all this stuff would really hurt him. And I think he addressed some of that, did Smith. And I watched that thinking, I wonder what's making him come out and say this, you know, that. I realised that.
I used to email him my videos. I'd email my videos to them down there at Sky. So I had their emails. I'd email it to them just to fry their heads. If they watch it, brilliant. If they don't, who cares anyway? But trust me, they watched it, mate, because I've made sure
they watched it, because
I put them on thumbnail so they get the video. And of course, my followers would send them on Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. So they're revising the behaviour, and if Sky are less biased now, and I have seen changes in their behavioural patterns, by the way. If Sky are less biased now as a result of your videos and other people like you, then that's a good thing, isn't it? It's a good thing for them, because, you know, as you just said, we can all improve, we can all get better. Sky can get better at what they do, you can get better at what you do, and as long as people are taking it on board and saying, well, actually, he's got a point there, we are really biased. It's not good enough, you know. We have to be neutral. You know, I hear the commentary on the DAZN shows, and they're 5 times worse than Sky ever were, by the way. They never mention the opponent. And as I've said, is keep sticking it to them. You're not wrong in what you're saying, and keep doing. And if people don't like it, it's that old saying, isn't it? The truth hurts, and you've obviously hit a raw nerve.
Yeah, well, I'm going to keep at it as well, because I'm only just getting wound up.
Keep going, mate. And everybody else, I'm definitely not down on boxing and down on boxers and coaches, if anybody gets that impression. I love the game. I just believe in standards. I'll never compromise my standards, and I want to see the coaching level in this country at a professional level. I want to see it improve, and I want to see new things in British fighters doing what other fighters are doing, irrespective of what championships and what belts we win. I want to see some new tricks now in British boxing, because it's all a bit stale and there aren't many teachers out there.
All right then, well, Julian, you have a great night, and we'll chat again.
Okay, you take care, Russell. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
Thanks, mate.
Well, that were Julian McGowan, former trainer to British champion, super featherweight champion, Gary Sykes. I think he was world ranked as well at one point, Gary Sykes. So he knows his stuff. The integrity of Julian, you might have noticed, is something that I like, and they don't see a lot in the sport of boxing. So he's one of boxing's good guys. So, all right. So peace out, keep on trucking, keep supporting boxing. I think it's time to have a lolly. I'm trying to cut my son down. We're addicted, aren't we? I'll see if I can get them all down before I get my proper teeth fixed in April. I only suck them, I don't crunch them. But I do like Chupa Chups, they're called. Do you know why I've bought them? I'll tell you why, sure. When I went for me thing at Turkey, I had to go to Aberdale Road, Sheffield, for one of them 90 quid things where they swab your nose and got. So while I was waiting for results, I says, oh, I'll have a Chupa Chup. So I bought 10. Well, it was £4.50. I goes, what, for 10 Chupa Chups? I goes, yeah. So me being me, I goes, here. Only 15 pence each. So you're making 30p on each one. He went, yeah. So I paid it, and I sat there and I thought, fucking prick. I went out and bought 200, like a little tree, innit? Little things like that did me head in. I was raging. Spoiled me night, that. Spoiled my journey all the way home. And I got stuck in traffic at Parkway. And I was raging. Nobody likes being shafted, do they? So, all right, well, I'll get this out today. Who'll take his shoes? It seems to be taking ages to upload, but I'll see if we can get this out
time is it now?
See if we can get this out for 7 o'clock tonight. All right. Peace out.